Smoke clung to the gutted vaults of Königsberg Castle. A curator led a friend into the basement, pointed at a melted, honey-colored mass on the stones and said, "It's all gone." Weeks later, he wrote to Berlin, "The Amber Room has survived," which was true. The official narrative suggests the eighth wonder vanished in the bombing. But the deeper implication is this: someone shaped that story. To understand why a room of fossilized light became a weapon, we need to go back, first to a diplomatic gift that built an alliance, then to a war machine that rebranded it as German heritage and seized it in hours. The human stakes started with pride and power. The Amber Room wasn't just art, it was leverage on the European chessboard. It began in Prussia around 1701, when Andreas Schluter sketched an idea so audacious it needed new techniques. Amber masters heated, softened, and married resin to wood and metals to build luminous panels. Years passed. The commission outlived patrons, but the idea endured. When Russia's Peter the Great toured Berlin, he didn't just admire the panels, he telegraphed opportunity. Frederick William I, light on art and heavy on soldiers, read the signal. In 1716, he traded panels for troops and favor. The gift sealed a hard alliance against Sweden and moved the room east. In St. Petersburg, architects expanded it far beyond the original concept, adding Venetian mirrors, gilded figures, and Florentine mosaics. By the time it settled at the Catherine Palace, it had become a stage where Russian rulers performed power. Candlelight made the amber glow like a private sunrise in winter. What nobody knew at the time was how fragile the material politics would be. Amber shrank in cold, softened in heat, and the room needed constant care, yet its symbolism hardened. By the 1930s, curators had one color photograph and dozens of black and white images, evidence of a national treasure whose survival mattered to morale. Then came 1941. Operation Barbarossa put heritage into the crosshairs. Meanwhile, in Pushkin, curators faced a choice: disassemble brittle panels and risk shattering, or hide everything. They pasted crude wallpaper over centuries of craftsmanship, scattered sand across the floor, and hoped ignorance would beat intent. But intent had marching orders. The Amber Room appeared on Nazi repatriation lists as German-made art. Soldiers reached the Catherine Palace, peeled back the disguise, and moved with practiced speed. Within 36 hours, panels, frames, and mosaics were crated, 27 boxes, witnesses say, and shipped to Königsberg. In Alfred Rode's museum, the room was reassembled as propaganda, an exhibit that said, "We can take your wonders." This was the moment everything changed. Once the room entered a war economy of loot and optics, its value as evidence, of culture, of competence, of victory, eclipsed its value as art, and evidence can be controlled. The stakes escalated as the front lines shifted. If the panels survived, they could be reclaimed, displayed, and used to legitimize whoever held them. If destroyed, blame could be weaponized. That's why the next months read like a cover story being drafted in real time. Action first. In Königsberg, Rode oversaw display, then, as Allied bombing approached, ordered the room dismantled again. His paperwork matters. On January 12, 1945, he noted crating and planned evacuation to Saxony, but trains were unreliable, routes were cut. Meanwhile, August 1944 brought heavy raids. A family friend later recalled standing with Rode in the castle cellar, staring at a honey-like mass on stone. He reportedly said, "It's all gone." Weeks later, Rode wrote Berlin, "The Amber Room has survived, apart from 6 dado panels." Now consider the deeper implication. 2 conflicting statements from the same man suggest one of 3 things: partial destruction spun into hope, intentional misdirection to confuse future occupiers, or pressure from above to maintain a narrative until relocation was secure. Each path protects someone: Rode, his superiors, or the regime's image. Impact was immediate. When Soviet forces took the city in 1945, search teams combed the ruins. They found 3 burned Florentine mosaics in the castle cellar. They also recovered furniture tied to the Catherine Palace. These are concrete finds. They ground the story in place. Some elements remained on site and burned, but absence, no crates, no intact panels, spurred a new contest: who would own the truth? While that was happening in Kaliningrad, political incentives grew. Early Cold War propaganda needed moral clarity. If the Nazis destroyed the room, restitution claims against Germany carried weight. If the Red Army accidentally torched it during victory chaos, the narrative fractured. Declassified notes from Alexander Brusov, who led the Soviet hunt, leaned toward destruction in the castle. Yet the searches continued. Years of digs, depositions, hints, and rumors. Persistence served 2 aims: demonstrate effort, and keep the possibility of German culpability alive. Meanwhile, another thread surfaced at sea. Eyewitness claims placed crates on the Wilhelm Gustloff. torpedoed in January 1945. The shipwreck has been surveyed multiple times. No panels. The same hope shifted to the Karlsruhe. Divers reported military cargo, but no amber. These maritime theories do something clever. They move responsibility away from occupied Königsberg and into an irrecoverable deep. If true, the sea becomes the perfect archive. Tragic, inaccessible, final. If false, it still buys ambiguity. Let's pivot to the critical piece of evidence that cuts through the fog. Provenance in 1997 of the fourth Florentine mosaic, touch and smell, found in Germany, linked to a soldier's looting. Its survival outside Königsberg undermines a total destruction at Castle Thesis, while confirming panel fragmentation and theft in the evacuation window. Therefore, we face a composite outcome. Some elements burned, some were pilfered, and the core panels either perished or were hidden. Now, consider the covert logic. In 1944 to 45, as defeat loomed, Nazi policy dispersed valuables across vaults, mines, and tunnels. Königsberg had underground spaces. The castle stood above cellars and passages. If the panels were smoked, cracked, or blackened by heat, no longer museum-ready. REWROTE had motive to hide damage and buy time. His September assurance to Berlin reads like a placeholder. Keep faith, keep funding, keep the optics. But there was one problem. Amber is unforgiving. Heat can cloud it, soot can embed, adhesives slump. Even if crates left the castle, their contents may have been irreparably compromised. Soviet investigators later suggested the room was destroyed in the bombardment, a claim that simplifies a messy truth and serves state interests. Later Western investigations, including those by Scott Clark and Levy, argued a harsher version. The panels survived bombing but were destroyed amid Red Army looting and fires in the city's aftermath. That theory carries risk for any official narrative in Moscow, yet it aligns with the timeline of urban chaos and with the discovery of burned mosaics underground. Impact, again. By keeping the story unresolved, both sides leveraged uncertainty. The Soviets reconstructed the room beginning in 1979, culminating in 2003, a diplomatic act with Germany that reframed loss as resilience. Germany, by contrast, emphasized repatriation lists and Nazi documentation to argue organized seizure, not random theft. Each move narrows culpability for final destruction while broadening moral claims. 3 days earlier, a small human detail closed the loop. A German son with an inherited mosaic tried to sell it. He said his father took it during removal. A microstory, but it shifts scale. Grand narratives collapse into private possession. If a wall mosaic can sit above a couch for decades, what could have happened to less distinctive carved amber strips? The official narrative suggests the amber room vanished. The evidence suggests something more uncomfortable: a layered disappearance, bomb damage, compartmentalized looting, strategic misdirection, and post-war political need. When art becomes evidence, the truth rarely travels in one crate. While search teams sifted ruins and rumors multiplied, another struggle took shape: who would define the loss? The official narrative suggests total destruction in the castle, which absolves later actors and keeps the moral ledger simple. But the deeper implication is this: memory became an instrument. If the room could not be recovered, it could be reauthored. So, moving into the modern era, the state pivoted from hunt to rebuild. In 1979, a directive authorized a full reconstruction at the Catherine Palace. The choice mattered. By recreating the room, authorities turned a mystery into a monument of resilience, of continuity, and of selective truth. Craftsmen faced a practical riddle. There were 86 black and white photos, one color slide from 1937, fragments of amber, and a damaged miniature chest signed by an original master. The adhesives, the dyes, the layered techniques, none were documented. This was not simple carpentry, it was forensic memory. Let's pivot to the evidence. Conservators tested resins, replicated 18th century joints, and reverse-engineered glues to allow future repairs, because amber moves with heat and time. They sliced thousands of pieces to a few millimeters, arranged mosaics to match grayscale patterns, and dyed resin to mirror the warm spectrum captured in that single slide. They even reconstructed the Florentine mosaics using hard stones, then validated their choices when the missing touch and smell surfaced in Germany in 1997. That one artifact became a Rosetta Stone, a check against drift. Now, consider the geopolitical fallout. Funding stalled after the Soviet collapse. Then, a German corporation stepped in, financing completion with a public deadline tied to St. Petersburg's tercentenary in 2003. When the room opened, leaders from Russia, Germany, and the West stood together in a chamber born of Prussian craft, Russian imperial theater, Nazi seizure, post-war ambiguity, and late 20th century sponsorship. The room no longer just memorialized loss, it brokered a relationship. It suggested closure without conceding blame. Meanwhile, treasure hunts continued because uncertainty is leverage. Maritime theories placed responsibility in the deep, tunnel theories placed it under interdicted ground. In 1968, the demolition of Königsberg Castle sealed the last physical site, ending any easy verification. That act, whether urban planning or erasure, preserved ambiguity as policy. At the human level, quiet moments kept surfacing. A mosaic above a couch, a rumor of crates on a winter platform, a curator's two statements, both plausible, both useful. Each detail sustained a layered truth. Fragments exist, the whole is gone, the story serves power. Speaking of influence, the reconstructed room must be maintained like a living witness. Weekly inspections, sensitive adhesives, climate control, because the symbol cannot be allowed to fail. Tourists see gold light and imperial flourishes. Behind that glow is a negotiated memory, a state decision to resolve debate with an object that looks like certainty. The critical question remains, did the cover-up rewrite history, or did history demand a cover? In practice, both. The ambiguity protected institutions, the reconstruction protected meaning, and somewhere between the burnt cellars and the gala opening, the amber room passed from evidence to narrative. In the end, the amber room isn't just missing, it's curated uncertainty, useful to regimes, irresistible to treasure hunters, and instructive for anyone tracking how power edits memory. Let me know in the comments, what's your assessment of the competing theories, and who benefited most from the ambiguity? If you value this kind of deep investigation, subscribe for more analysis and watch our next film on post-war art restitution battles, where archives, motives, and memory collide.